Today in Castle News, we have many crazy stories, starting with Lucy Smith down in the field. Let's go to her.
Reporting live, this is Lucy Smith. During the Middle Ages, knights were not born overnight. In fact, they began training at the age of 7. They would be sent to do household chores around the Lord's castle. Also in the news, it is very difficult and expensive to become a knight. Even though all free men had the ability to become a knight, it was not likely they would unless they had the right connections. Usually, knights would come from wealthy families. A squire's training involved strength, fitness, and various weapons. Here is where they exercised their archery skills, swordsmanship, and other duties. During wars, squires assisted knights by tending horses and dressing them with medieval armor. Before being a squire, they had to do the duties of a page, which were cleaning the Lord's clothes and acting as a servant for the ladies of the castle. Around the age of 21, men would officially become knights. This ceremony was called dubbing. They would be knighted by another knight, a noble, or even the king. Here, this young man is becoming a knight.
Arise, Sir Knight.
Knights had a major role when it came to decision-making during the battle. They not only had to train physically, but they trained mentally too. Whichever side had the better trained soldiers, they were more likely to win. So that means the location did not matter as much as the characteristics of the knights. Medieval knights acted as a weapon for the Lord. Because they were given land by the Lord, in return they served in the military. Knights used chain mail, a knee-length mail shirt called a hauberk. They wore a mail coif, a metal plate armor, and a helmet. They carried around a lance, a sword, a tent, silk pennon, kitchen, and kettle.
Wow, that was a great story. Now to Marco with another one.
England has broken out into war. Many people are fighting over who will rule England. We may never know. Until now, where I tell you.
The year's 1455. Everyone in England was angry about losing the 100 Years' War with France, especially the king, King Henry VI. Since Henry was mentally unstable, everyone was looking for someone to step up and usurp the throne. One of the people to attempt to do this was Richard of York. Richard of York would fall in battle against the king's forces and the queen's personal forces, since the queen wanted her son to inherit the throne. Richard's son, Edward, continued to fight for the throne. Edward defeated Margaret's forces at Tewton and proclaimed King Henry IV. Henry, Margaret, and their son fled to Scotland. One of the people who helped start the revolution was Warwick, who did not get along with the new king. The king would block all the things he would try to do, so after many different skirmishes he was forced to flee to France. Warwick came back to England with the forces of Louis XI and an old enemy, Margaret. He defeated Edward, Edward fled to the Netherlands, and King Henry VI was crowned king, with Warwick ruling as lieutenant. However, Edward came back to England with Burgundy aid, fought and defeated Warwick's forces at the Battle of Barnet, and slew Warwick. As well, they captured Margaret, killed her son, and captured and killed Henry in London Tower. Edward was secure as king until his death in 1483, but when his brother Richard inherited the throne, people didn't trust him, so they turned to Henry Tudor of Lancastria. Henry fought and killed Richard at Bosworth Field in 1485 and was crowned king. Henry defeated a Yorkist uprising in 1486, led by Lambert Simnel. This is where a lot of historians point to where the wars finally ended. The Wars of Roses is best remembered by the plays written by William Shakespeare that share the same subject matter as the wars.
Great story, Marco. Now to Xavier.
Firearms and gunpowder outdated many modern melee weapons known at the time, and while they may not be the modern automatic weapons we see today, they were still effective on the battlefield. With the creation of firearms, battle became less oriented around castles, outdating siege warfare. For example, they'll never see it coming. With the development of easy-to-move cannons, castles were no longer a safe hiding place This caused many nations to think that the best offense was a good defense. For example, with the creation of firearms, siege warfare became almost extinct, and nations took to the battlefields where they would duke it out with guns instead of swords. Alright, the real gunpowder here to drop some knowledge about gunpowder on Instagram. As you can see, the first post is just a simple picture of gunpowder, which is traditionally made of sulfur, charcoal, and potassium nitrate. It was given its black coloring to distinguish itself from smoke powder, which was commonly used in the English and Chinese military. The second post is of a Chinese man lighting a firework, which is where gunpowder was most commonly found. Gunpowder was created in China during the Song Dynasty and was commonly used for war tactics and for fun, like fireworks. The third post is of a cannon, which is where gunpowder was commonly found in the 1400s, where it was beginning to become weaponized in England and in China. Cannons, though bulky, were effective in taking down large structures and helped win many wars. The fourth post was the first recorded time where gunpowder was used in war in England against the Muslims. Since the Muslim people did not know the use of gunpowder yet, England easily won this war. The fifth post is of a firearm, which is one of the most common places gunpowder is found today. With the creation of the firearm, a military revolution was sparked not only in Europe, but the rest of the world. The sixth post is of a ship, which is where cannons would often be stored, creating the first naval units in the mid-1400s and early 1500s. The seventh post is a castle, which became outdated and no longer the center of war because of firearms and cannons easily destroying them. That's going to end the Real Gunpowder's Instagram. Let's get back to the news.
Wow, that was cool. Now to a new weapon, the broadsword.
O happy dagger, this is thy sheath. But you must wait, O Juliet, for one is not wielding though a dagger. Romeo, for thou art not dead, now you must tell me what I am holding. It is but a dangerous weapon, called the broadsword, invented in the late 16th century, meant to be a two-handed weapon wielded by only the bravest of knights. Oh, how I thank thy Romeo! What shall I ever do without you? But Juliet, if thou must kill oneself, I must recommend the handgun, created in 1420, used with gunpowder as a weapon of war. But Romeo, why shall I not just use a large full metal weapon called the mace? Why no, Juliet. It was used by only the bravest of knights when it was invented in the early 12th century, and it would give you a great deal of trouble because it has a great spike-filled ball at the top. I have made my decision. It will be the Balisard dagger, invented in the early 14th century. Well, that is the best choice yet, O Juliet, for it is just a larger and sharper dagger, and is perfect for the occasion. And now, I die. No, Juliet, for now I shall take the weapon of my choice, a battle axe, which is a two-handed weapon with a large curved blade at the top, and kill myself as well.
That was good.
Now let's look at a cool Instagram from Eli.
Hello, my name is Sir Eli, and I am an avid sword lover. I study swords whenever possible and share my knowledge on Instagram. I will now give you a rundown of what my studies have shown. During the Middle Ages, war was a plague in Europe. Most all rulers and political elite got involved deeply within the many wars taking place. With this high increase of warfare came a demand for the perfect killing machine. The weapon of choice by many knights and foot soldiers became the sword. With new innovations in armor and knights, swords soon followed, bringing their own to the table. Creating a sword was no easy task. A very hard and laborious job was required to create this machine. The blacksmith would need to weld together bars of iron while bending them and then compressing them into a thin sheet of metal or iron. This process granted the blade an ornamented look. They then added a groove down the center of the blade to grant flexibility and reduce the weight that benefited the knight greatly in battle. The most popular and used sword was the double-edged sword. On average, these swords were around 90 centimeters, 80 being the blade and 10 being the handle. The blades were broad and tapered towards the blunted tip, making them used for slashing and not thrusting. The Crusader sword is one very good example. This sword includes a round pommel at the handle, a straight cross guard, double-edged cutting blade, and weighed around 2 pounds. The length was around 38 inches, 96.5 centimeters, and was very heavy. The increased weight made it lethal to fellow knights wearing light armor. This sword became very popular and spread throughout Europe very fast. The sword was first used during the Crusades, but soon became an iconic sword on the battlefield of the Middle Ages. Another example of this style was the Italian sword. This sword had a large wheel pommel, a wooden grip bound with cord, a ricasso, which is part of the blade close to the hilt left unshaped, Arabic inscriptions along the blade, and curved finger guard. The sword weighed about 1 pound and measured 41 inches or 104 centimeters. The sword was very light and easy to use, allowing for a fast, clean kill. The sword was used heavily in the 1400s within Italy and became very popular among soldiers. Swords soon became more than just a weapon for the battlefield, but a symbol in society. Swords soon became praised in poetry and a large number of kenning. A Spaniard writer by the name of Madame de Alunno wrote that Spaniards did not abandon their swords either for confession or for communion, claiming to defend their religion. In the morning, the men kissed their blade and then made a sign of the cross, honoring their religion and their sword. Swords were a staple in Middle Age society and in the battlefield, and will live on forever. Thank you for watching today's broadcast. Come back tomorrow where we'll have new breaking stories.